Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Welcome to the initial first episode of the post-incident analysis featuring our good friend Mike Callan, who is thankfully with us today.
Oh, was there a possibly unthankful? Like what?
No.
Was it possible that he wasn't going to be here?
No.
Did something happen? Was there a massive earthquake in Connecticut that I don't know about?
Hey, you guys don't even think right. I'm 75. I thought you thought I would be dead.
This is the first episode of what we are hoping will be many. We call it the post-incident analysis, where we're going to go and break down an event. We're going to say that right now for an event. And in our first one, we're going to do one that happened in May 7th, 2009 in Maryland, where a strip mall blew up. We're going to go through this in a short format and then kind of explain the philosophy of this show and what we're looking to accomplish by doing these things. So what do you think? Should we just open up right with the video?
I say go.
All right, let's do it. Here is the video, and I'm just going to put this thing on loop while we talk about this.
What is this at a strip club? A strip club? A strip mall?
A strip club. Yeah, a strip mall.
Oh!
And that is a major explosion. Mike, what happened here?
Well, they got a call for natural gas. The gas company was already there for 15 minutes. It was underground. He was looking for it underground, and then it began to evolve. They got there. They began to evacuate the building, and during their search, they began to realize that it may have been more than they thought. They were trying to get everything. It took them about 20 minutes to evacuate the building. This is about 20, maybe 30 minutes into the emergency. But all that time, they were there trying to evacuate. But there was a series of issues. I mean, nothing goes right. Some of the meters weren't working. And it got up into the the suspended ceiling. Yeah. It was leaking from the outside, and a lot of guys don't realize that the gas meter is designed to take high pressures or relatively operating pressures in the whole system and then reduce it to the quarter PSI that goes into the buildings. So if it's
That's
leaking
that big
from
hockey puck thing, right?
Yep. If it's leaking on the city side, you're going to get a lot more pressure. And what came out was that it followed the excavation. It came out at the gas meter. They got readings at the gas company knew it was there. Even one of the officers looked and could see the bubbles coming from the broken pipe. But what it was doing was going around and going up into the soffits, and that was getting it into
so there was like an
attic.
There was an overhang of the building. It was going up that and into the building that way.
We've had this happen a bunch of times in New York City, specifically Manhattan, where a gas leak happens outside, and that gas leak underground finds its way to the electric conduit. The electric, it just tracks the outside of that electric pipe right into a major building, and it fills the whole building with gas. That's...
In fact, any excavation, gas follows excavations. It doesn't like to move through solid ground.
Oh, yeah, path of least resistance.
Okay, and that's why sometimes ice or concrete or tar on top will trap it. And it's almost every time we describe one of these, I can give you another one of these where this happened. It's just different. So, for example, getting trapped, it blows up a restaurant in Kansas City. Migration is what gave us the Lafayette explosion. It came along the ground, found each house, and all 4 houses blew up eventually. So there's a lot of these case histories out there.
So they're 30 minutes into this. They've already then made entry into the building. They know that there's a gas leak. At the point that it did detonate, was there an expectation that somewhere they were above the LEL, or had they not yet at that point figured that out?
That's a good point, because that's one of the contributing factors that the investigation a year later came out with, is that when they first got there, they had instrumentation. They tried to calibrate, and what they used the word initialize the equipment, and they were getting different readings. One meter was reading 25% of the LEL. Another one was reading 4. Some weren't reading any, and because of the nature, and the report makes a point, they had 76 meters across the county. The problem was only about half were working, because, as they said, quote, due to the constraints in budgeting. Okay, so and we all lived that life. Something's got to be, so they couldn't always pay for the maintenance or the training, and therefore that was a contributing factor. I like to use these for one reason. I always like to use them for one reason. Can this happen in your fire department?
Absolutely.
That's what we're doing this for. And you said, I want to go back to that, because you said something, and I have it pulled up on the screen now, and you said it took a year for them to put this out, and no fault of their own. It takes time to interview, to gather the data, to download the meters, all that stuff, and they put out this report. Tell us what this is.
This is a FACE report. It's a fatality accident, and what they do is FACE is consequences and evaluation, I think. But what it is they usually put it out for line of duty deaths or injuries and deaths in a occupation, to kind of say, here's your post-incident analysis. They call it an investigation, okay? But what it comes back with, it says, here's the contributing factors. And I've got one. When I wrote the electric book, for every chapter, I put a FACE report at the end of the chapter of a firefighter getting killed from electricity, because it can happen. But what it does
if you can't give a lesson without drilling into a real life occurrence, it just doesn't sit with the guys as much.
Well, I think we've talked about this before. I can always remember you're sitting around the coffee table at the station, and somebody says, what if it happens? Well, I would sometimes say, well, give me a few minutes. I'll show you where it did.
Yeah. Hold on a second. I'll answer that question for you.
Okay. And that, you know what, it makes it real. And the other reason is, and we've talked about this, is that even with a line of duty death, if I lost somebody, I would like to be able to use that the way he probably or she probably wanted me to. Teach others so they don't have to go through this again. Because we don't look at this that way sometimes. We look at it as, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy and a lesson that a firefighter who would risk your life for you, why would he not say afterwards, as an angel in heaven, take this information and use it?
So what were some of the things that, right, clearly we go on natural gas runs all the time, right? So is this a matter of there truly were mistakes that were made, or is this just a function of numbers, where this just happened to be the unlucky lottery where something bad happened? And are there lessons to be learned from what NIOSH put out?
Well, I tell you, the way I would start is, size up is always three things to me: the time it takes you to get the information, the quality of the information that you have, and then your ability to use it. Okay. And so it was very fast, and we talk about it. They're talking about in all these bullets of what we should have been doing. But obviously, that's like asking the investigator to look at this for 20 minutes and tell me what you think. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So you've got, they recognized they had gas. They recognized the gas guy was trying to fix it or even find it. And then there was a period of time where there were actually evacuating. And I think the timeline took them about 20 minutes from arrival to maybe 23 to evacuate the entire building. And then after that, within 5 to 6, it blew up. So they were trying to get it out. Their problem was, at least I don't say their problem was, is because of the instrumentation. There's only one real. If I gave you a Geiger counter and sent you towards uranium, when that number started going beep 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 beep, you would back up.
Right.
But without a gas meter, you really don't understand the concentrations you're dealing with. Plus, it was high above them.
Okay.
The ignition source eventually was the electric meter had caught on fire. And because of the gas, and it ignited it. And there's one little note and this is why the report is so useful, is anybody will take that explosion and we look at it with our own experiences, without looking at what's in the report and what was going on. For example, one of the recommendations was standard operating procedures. Well, yes, but they just had a new change of standard operating procedures within 2 months. And if you've got a large fire department, by the time that goes through, it probably was May of 2010 when they got this report at the same time.
Right.
So answering your question, Mike, did they make mistakes? I've never seen a firefighter make mistakes. I think we don't have all the information. We're working on what we've got. I have never seen a fireman say, hey, look, I think I'm going to die. You go in thinking you're going to be able to solve the problem for people, and you do the best job you can. So I think there's always going to be, there's only so negative ways of saying it. I want to just look at it. Let's put it this way. If I could find one of those guys, we'd get the answers because we'd go to a bar, we'd have a beer, and they'd tell us what was going on.
But there are definitely some points that are lessons learned that don't always have to be negative moments, right? Because if you look at that, from what I'm gathering, there was one lieutenant in the back of the building who was sort of in the building but was able to actually get out just as it was going off. Nobody else was actually in the building, right?
No, that's right. In fact, he was a captain. He was a captain off the first due engine, and he had been there since the beginning. He was trying to figure out what was going on. And then he got to the back, and he saw the fire. 2, he realized there was a problem and was trying to get out. But simultaneously, the guy in the front, around the same moment, and I don't know that it was, nobody can say that it was, is the picture of the guy going in by opening the door. Right. Okay. And then all hell broke loose.
So, I mean, there is some kudos and lessons learned. Like, okay, well, what are some of the things that they did right? Well, if they didn't have a lot of working gas meters, at the same time, there was nobody in the building. So at least to the point, I mean, yes, there was somebody walking in. I don't know whether or not they had a meter on them and all those things. But if you look at it from the big picture level, somebody was like, no, let's stay out of here. Like, there's no reason to be in this scene. Like, we can't get rid of the gas. We can't do this. We can't do that. Was there ventilation happening? Like, were they actively looking to ventilate?
Well, there's two. To answer your first question, actually, the captain that dove out the back was contemplating. That was why he was back there. He was trying to decide whether they would go inside the building. He hadn't decided on an offensive attack on the problem. His first job had already been solved. I got everybody out.
Right.
All right. So the second part was boy, this is what happens when you're 75. Give me the second point again. Ventilation.
Was the ventilation
going? Yes.
Okay. Yeah, there's two things about the ventilation. They didn't address it, although they did try to set up their positive pressure fans.
Okay.
And in the report, it says they couldn't get them started, and the report says this, it may have been a blessing because it could have created the ignition sooner.
I'm looking at, so again, I know we're going to get a little bit into the philosophy of why we're doing these shows, but I hope everybody that's listening to this is kind of starting to pick up that, this is an interesting incident, and we're doing it in a rather quick thing. But I think the philosophy of why we're doing this, and I hope it syncs with everybody, is that we're kind of wetting the whistle with giving you guys a little bit of a video or pictures and a face report, which will all be part of the show notes for downloading and using. But the thing is that you can now take our points and add to them, bring this back to the firehouse, and have further discussion of like, what would you do? How would you learn? And it's almost like a training package that I'm so glad that Mike Callan brought this to us and said, hey, this would be a great way to do. I am over the moon with doing this kind of thing. This whole idea of giving them a training lesson in a format that you can just put on the TV and say, guys, watch this shit. And that's it. You can phone it in with that and let us do all the work. Or you could be an actual officer and print this stuff out and say, let's talk about this even further.
And now I can imagine that the first time I ever did this was with an overhead of a truck in Memphis driving into. Now think about this. Memphis, they drove their truck. I don't say it's Memphis. I take it back. Tennessee, outside of Memphis. I never got to city. But they drove into a propane cloud and the truck stalled. Oh. And they tried to start it again. And that was the explosion that brought about the fatality. And that was, now we're talking 1980s. I wrote down at the top of my notes, I had completely forgot about it. It's referenced in this video about Buffalo in '83, where propane exploded and blew the ladder truck 35 feet sideways. Not only did it kill the 5 firefighters, it killed the 2 people in the building. Wow. That the ladder truck hit. See, but we don't remember those. Now, me, in '83, I was an officer. I was a lieutenant on an engine for 2 years, and that bothered me because I said, how many of these do I go? And the problem was the only reason the ladder got caught in the engine, because it was during the winter, couldn't stop fast enough and got far enough away from the building. I mean, it's a series of every one of these is an interesting thing to look at from a point of view that there is a lesson. My lesson from this, and I only say it because it goes all the way back to the Toluene videos of explosion in Phoenix, where the firefighter, they were cutting through the tank. I watched that, and as a lieutenant, I said after that, if I go to any flammables for the rest of my life, I am going to anticipate and expect that ignition is going to occur.
It's stuck in your head.
It burns it into your head because without getting into it, this is a scenario that I said all the time. I say it all the time. I don't want to be ever the question where somebody from their family came up to me and looked at me and said, why?
Yeah. Or in a better case scenario, like let's say it didn't result in injury and we've all done these things. The punchline of a joke, like where a guy, did you see those knuckleheads? That's a bad burn as well. I can only hope that my death could bring humor to hundreds of thousands of people for at least a week on social media. that is the best I could hope for in my life. Is it possible? Could we go through the NIOSH report, the points that they said, hey, listen, this is what, and let's kind of go through each one of them, because at the very least, I feel like we should go through all of the NIOSH lessons learned, because they may see something that we haven't talked about yet, and kind of go through them for the crowd. So the first one here, ensure standard operating procedures for natural gas leaks are understood and followed. We kind of already talked about that. Contact the utility companies, natural gas and electric, immediately cut all external power to the structure when the gas leaks are suspected. So I'm guessing they're turning around and saying, hey, listen, the fire started in the electrical panel. Had the power been cut, that fire would have never happened.
In fact, this is a good a lesson here, is that I have since around this time I've been doing a lot of utilities. And I train electrical, I get a chance to do electrical training for firefighters through these. They now, with their own, if they're gas and electric, they will, with a gas emergency, now begin to try and kill the power themselves. I don't mean it that way. They order the electric company to come and shut the power off, right? Because they're worried about electricity very much is a common cause of ignition in any gas leak.
Well, I can tell you from recent experience, the power company can now shut electric off remotely. So I know back when we started fire, right, it was, we would pull the meter, right? That's how we would kill the power. We would pull the meter because we didn't want to wait for the electric company to come and have to disconnect the meter. But nowadays, and not everybody, but probably in many areas, the power company can disconnect remotely.
From like a cell phone.
From like a cell phone,
and it just shuts it off.
Yeah. They just go to the command board and they shut it down. So you don't have to wait that long. They can do it relatively quickly.
Well, and I'll give you the last set. When you pull a meter now, sometimes pulling some of these smart meters doesn't stop the electricity.
Right. Nope.
They can be fed from other sides too.
Yeah, and especially with solar and all the other stuff, which we can go down a rabbit hole. But there's one thing in here I do want to talk about it, and at least give it a couple of seconds. Is that one of their recommendations is to ensure that rapid intervention teams or fast teams, wherever you are in the country, are staged at the onset of the incident. Like, if you're pulling up on scene, that is not my first thing to think about. Now, I understand that there's 2 in, 2 out, which is, a good recommendation. And in all reality, you should have it kind of like pre-designated where the driver, the engineer, the chauffeur, whatever you call him, is part 1 of that 2 in, 2 out. But at the same time, it's like, I would kind of dismiss that if I was that department, be like, yeah, okay, we're not doing that.
I would call. I mean, Bob, we travel around the country. We teach at lots of different departments. You have a gas leak. If you have 2 engines and 2 trucks that respond, you're talking 2 people on each rig. Like, the rapid intervention, right? The rapid intervention, like setting up a team, that's just not physically possible for many places. So yeah, you got. I'm sure everybody on scene that's out of the building would be ready to go as a rapid intervention team to go there, to have like a staged team sitting off to the side like we do during a working structure fire. Totally different ball game. But for your run-of-the-mill gas leak, which, to be honest with you, this is a run-of-the-mill gas leak until it's not a run-of-the-mill gas leak.
Until it's not.
Right? Like, it's not like they were like, hey, listen, there's going to be an explosion in this building. Set yourself up for an explosion. It's, hey, we got an odor of gas, and you respond like you would anything else. I feel like that is an impossible task. There's 2 parts to that. One, in this report, they actually had part of the initial response, a RIT team, but the note says that it was undermanned and therefore it was waiting for enough people. So this is a combination county. So I imagine it may have been coming from a situation. But in reality, if you look at 20 minutes of an odor or gas call, okay, and you're in that building already looking for it. I mean, we walk around sometimes looking for it. The problem is you can't walk around sniffing. I mean, we sound like a pack of bloodhounds. That's, the good part about it is, though, all of us know that we need RIT. One of the reasons it's a recommendation is that NFPA 1500 had come out a little before that. And what are they? They're talking about rapid intervention teams.
They were like, yeah.
Yeah,
I like it.
Even the one below that, I mean, on face value, you're like, oh, okay, that sounds good. But the reality of functioning doesn't necessarily allow for that, right? Ensure the collapse and explosion zones are established when dealing with the potential threat. Well, they were outside of the collapse and explosion zones, but at some point you have to operate. So the dude that got blasted being near the door, he was going in to perform a function. At some point, that function needs to be done. because even if you're like, well, it was full of gas, he should have never entered. Well, how the hell do you know it's full of gas unless somebody's in there determining that it's full of gas?
There is risk involved. I've got a good friend, Greg Knowles, said it. We're in a job where we are risk takers. Okay, Our job is to take. I have another friend who says we trade risk for the public. We'll take your public risk and we'll assume it to figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. However you look at it, the concept of risk versus benefit is the issue. I get very upset when people say risk versus reward because there's no reward in this. There's a benefit of me getting involved. Okay, I don't give somebody a cookie.
Really? Are you serious? We always got cookies if we did a good job. That's how we operated.
Well, that's because you deal with guys who don't have a first name. They have nicknames like Gonzo, Bubba, Mongo. Okay. They can't even remember their first name. Don't get me going on that.
Don't get angry because you didn't get a cookie.
So, but the other part of this is how can you calculate risk? And this is why if you're going to deal with natural gas or propane, with any flammable, they're combustible or flammable. Therefore, they have one component that helps us understand what's going on, and that's the LEL. The odor in a gas leak only tells us it's leaking because you shouldn't smell it. Okay, if you smell gas, there's a problem. Right. You've got to figure out why you're smelling gas, because even at the burner, it may not be calibrated right.
And to extend to 20 minutes into the operation, you're not smelling natural gas anymore.
No.
So either way, you need that meter because, you're not going to be able to be like, okay, I don't smell anything good. It's clear.
Well, and you guys know me enough. We've been around. I only say three things. If you're holding a meter in your hand, which you should be with natural gas, or any hazard that can be read or seen, is that meter telling you it's safe? Is that meter telling you it ain't safe? Or is that meter telling you it's dangerous and you could get killed? And when a combustible gas indicator beeps at 10%, it's telling you you're on your way to getting killed. Right? That was the problem with those two meters. Is one was reading 25%, the other was reading 4%, and the last thing they say about that bullet with meters is, well, we never really understood why it didn't work. Okay, they should have worked better. So they weren't even blaming them in any way. They were just saying that shouldn't have been a contributing factor. It's like saying I got a dull axe.
Right.
Okay. No, right. The things should be doing well. You guys don't use axes anymore. I know.
Well, I think we tore this one up. I would like to leave it there. Always, it's like bagpiping. Always leave them wanting more.
They should go to the report. They can look it up. And we've got the video. You got a video out of it. It doesn't even have to look it up. You're gonna provide it to them, Bobby. Right?
We're gonna put the video up. I'm gonna put the face report up. Everything you need as a training officer or as a member of a fire department is going to be there for you. Our analysis is going to be there for you. I hope this helps everybody. Mike, before we wrap it, I know Baltimore Hazmat Conference is coming up. Where are you going to be for your classes and everything?
I start on Thursday. I'm doing a whole class on Street Smart Hazmat, and that's that safe, unsafe, and dangerous stuff. Then I'm going to do a class during the week, during the Friday's pre-classes. Then I'm going to do a class on Saturday on that, class on Street Smart Chemistry and Facts of Life, which I say it's what I call my awareness and ops class. And then ultimately, I'm going to do the last Saturday with two great instructors, smartest guys I know. It's Keith Silverman and Bill Cullen. They're going to talk about organic peroxides, oxidizers, and I'm going to talk about oxidizers and polymers. So I'm working the whole week.
I got so excited when you said that statement, and I realized we're not teaching together, and you weren't talking about us.
We're not the two smartest guys, he knows.
No. We've always talked about that. We never teach. We teach opposite each other. I'm still always trying to figure out what you guys do with your escape room. So
are we.
Well, you can find us in Baltimore June 7th. We're 2 on Friday and 2 on Saturday. Come and check it out. Come to the booth. We're going to be running a scavenger hunt. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we will see you guys next time. You're having a booth, too.
Tell them to stop by the booth.
Booth 608. Get a free T-shirt. Come on by. All right, guys. We'll see you guys periodically whenever we get there.